I'm a front-end engineer in the web team. There's a few of the guys around there, so you can wave your hands if you want to, or not. I've been here for a year, but I've actually been living in London for over a decade. And before Busuu, I was working at Moo. And even before that, I was working at Virgin Media. So I've had a bit of a random background. But I'm still at Busuu because I really like it. A little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk to you about my team, who we are, what we do, the projects that we take care of on a day-to-day basis, and a little bit of the tech stack in case you want to join this exciting journey. And two relatively short stories. I won't go into detail, but you can ask me more about over a beer later. One of them is our biggest app. We're migrating from Angular to React. And another one is about making sure that our states that we keep in one of the applications are actually immutable. But I'll get into that later because Emerge.js is awesome. My team, we are between 4 to 5 engineers. Our numbers have changed over this past year. And we take care of 4 projects. 3 of them are outward facing, and 1 of them is an internal tool. We have a lot of internal stakeholders. I'll go through some examples of how we support them on a day-to-day basis. Our education team is actually huge. There are language experts, and they create all the courses where you can learn up to 12 different languages. Our marketing team, they create all the brand awareness and all the landing pages for the campaigns that we're going to have in the future. We take care of the CMS that they use to actually make these pages. The product team obviously has these ideas long-term on how to make Busuu a better product. And the sales team, they focus more on partnerships with other companies or B2B customers that need loads of licenses to learn languages. So obviously, apart from the usual maintaining the tools healthy and releasing new features, we need to make sure that we're improving our apps at the same time. So I'm going to go a little bit through the 4 applications and then tell you the stories of how we're working to improve these. The first one, if you Googled Busuu, is what we like to call the homepage. It's mainly all the landing pages that you would see on the campaigns when you click on Facebook or Twitter or just in general Google. It also has the registration flow and the login flow and the cart and the payments. So that's for free users that want to become premium users. A little bit of the tech stack, it's sits on top of CMS that's graph-based and it's in PHP 7. All of our services and helpers are ES6 based, and it's a static website. But as you can see from the screenshot, it's actually also responsive because most of the people nowadays like websites to look beautiful on big and small screens. Moving on to the next one, if you actually registered to use our application, this is what you would see on a day-in, day-out basis. Say you're very keen on learning Spanish, this is our web app. It's also responsive, and this is the one that I'll talk about more a little bit later. This is the one we're migrating from Angular to React. It's a single-page app, and all of our services are currently in ES6, so that's really exciting. And we write tests in Jest, we're using Jests and Enzyme for our newly migrated React services and components. So you might be wondering, there's a lot of content there. There's a lot of languages as well. Where does it actually come from? Well, this is our internal tool. It's called Slate. It's the CMS that education team uses to create all of the content that you would see in 12 different languages. It's React-based, and we use Material UI because it has a lot of super easy to just drop in components that you don't necessarily need to create yourself. It's a single-page app as well, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about what we're doing to improve this one as well, because the state is stored in Redux, and it's very complex and nested. But more on that later. And last but not least, we have the management platform. It's the sort of platform that you would use if you're a big company that want to buy, say, 1,000 licenses for your employees or your students to learn languages. So say a retail company based all over Europe, and you want your employees to be able to move from France to Germany to the UK. So this would be if you're a learning and development manager and you want to see if the students are actually up to date, they're learning their Spanish at the rate that they should be learning. It's Angular 1.6 based. It's a single-page app, and we write our tests using Jasmine. So that sets the scene. It's a lot to take in. I don't have much time. But now to the stories. The first story is around our web app. When I joined a year ago, I hadn't done Angular, but I learned a lot in this past year. And the team had set onto a journey to try and move away from Angular 1.6 because it's no longer, it's in long-term support. And they did a lot of investigation to see what, do you want to use Vue? Do you want to go to React? React was the winner because super popular and all the exciting things are happening there. Hiring was starting to get difficult for the guys to get someone else in their team. And also the app was not really performant. As the project grew, it hadn't really changed from the beginning. So it was just kind of falling behind. As well, the test suite was super hard to maintain because if you guys have written Angular tests, they're very slow to run. And yeah, it was just falling apart, all the test suite. And we wanted to actually make sure that the app worked as there were more features coming across. How are we doing it? When I joined the team, I was still coming to terms with how React and Angular could play around together. But the guys brought me up to speed super quick. And just to give you a little bit of an overview how we're doing it, we're going from bottom up. And we started migrating the most basic components with minimal dependencies, more like components that show things to React. And we're using this library called React to Angular. It's super lightweight. It's very popular. And all it does is it creates a little Angular wrapper around the components, and then you can put these components into your bigger Angular parents, kind of as the picture shows here. We decided that all the new features were going to be written in React, so all the components and services. And then as time went on, it was getting easier and easier. In addition, we promised ourselves that every time we migrated things to React, we would actually write amazing unit tests so that our coverage was better and also we could trust our app because it was getting a little bit not very reliable. So where are we at now? When I joined a year ago, we only had 10% of the code migrated to React. We're now at 65%. It's amazing. All of our services are based on ES6, and that's 40,000 lines of code, and 65% is in React. To put it into perspective, the journey has been super exciting, and I think like everything is falling into place now. Maybe at the end of the year, we'll have another talk and going into the pains and the happy times of what we went through as we were going through this journey. But if you have any more questions, I don't actually have any more details because it's a short story, but feel free to grab me after or any of my team if you want anything else, because I'm sure someone else is doing something similar here or thinking about it. My second short story is based around Slate. This is our education CMS, React-based, and we store all our state in Redux. If you've used Redux before, you know that things can get really complicated very quickly. And with this application in general, if you can think about it, it's kind of structured as a book. So we have 12 languages, but every language has different courses, different levels. They also have different lessons and units, etc. So multiply that times 12. And you can see it starts, if you're saving your state as an object, it starts getting complicated very quickly. And we obviously want our education team to be able to trust this tool and use it on a day-to-day basis without accidentally causing some bugs that could break things. As an example, a little bit of a recap of what a reducer is. It's meant to be pure function, takes in 2 arguments. The first one is a state, big object. And the action is meant to say or to show what you actually want to change. The fact that it's pure means that you shouldn't change the original state, but instead return a state with the changed properties that you want. And at first, when you look at this, you might not really know what is happening, apart from 3 levels deep, spread operators, meaning that you're actually not mutating the original one. And somewhere there, you're actually adding an object to an array. And this is just to add a label to an activity. This is not the most complex reducer that we have, but as the app grew and the necessities grew, we decided that we actually needed some library that was going to help us make sure that all the things that were changing in the state as the users went around creating their courses wasn't necessarily going to make the state not be immutable and change things we're not being meant to. I mean, I've already told most of the story. Mikael Westrate is pretty awesome dude. He wrote Immer.js. He also is part of MobX, one of the main guys. He went on and created this library, and it's super easy to understand. We also looked at Immutable.js, but the fact that it doesn't use normal JavaScript objects was starting to be a little bit difficult when we tried migrating to it. So we tried Immer.js, and it was, I mean, as this shows, is relatively easy to understand. You give it your state, all the changes are made in the draft, and it returns a completely new state with the changes that you want. It won't allow you to mutate the state if you actually want to, and it uses proxies in the background. I won't go into detail, but he's written a lot of really cool articles explaining how it actually works. All we do is we wrap our reducers with this function called the produce function that comes from the Immer.js library, and it takes in 2 arguments, our state and our producer function, which has all the changes that we actually want to make to the state. Going to the next slide. We've migrated 5 out of 16 reducers, not the most complex ones. And as far as it stands, the team can actually understand the code better. If we have someone new coming into the team, they'll actually know instantly what our reducers are doing in the really complex nested structure that we have in Slate. And going back to my first example, that's about 20 lines if you actually take all the rest of the stuff. It became 4 lines with the produce function. And I think it's much easier to understand. You actually know where you're going and what you're doing. And you don't have to be worried about human-prone errors, because humans do make errors when they write code accidentally. And if you're not convinced, even Dan Abramov, he wrote this, well, he retweeted this tweet in September 2018. And he's like the main guy, one of the main guys for Redux. And even he's super excited about it because it simplifies everything so much. I encourage you to try it. It's made our lives way easier. And it's an ongoing journey. Hopefully, we'll get to the end of it relatively soon. That's me. I don't have anything else to tell you today, but if you have any questions, any doubts, any ideas, I do hope it inspired you or it resonated with you, some of the stories. We're also hiring in my team and in Busuu in general, so if you're interested in taking on these awesome journeys, just give me a shout. Thanks.